And good afternoon, Lynn.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? Frank, you there?
I am here.
Frank, how are you?
I'm fine, Lynn. How are you?
Fine, thank you. It's nice to see you. Thank you for doing this. This is
Of course. And I just want to let people know that I was talking, but I had to mute my mic for a minute because the dog was barking and didn't realize I shut it off. But good afternoon, everybody. And we are continuing our election guide here. And today we have Councilor Lynn Ceglie, of course, Frank Prosnitz. And so how we are going to get started is first I want to remind people vote.sos.ri.gov is where you go to check out your ballot. Make sure you're registered to vote. Today is the deadline, 4 p.m. today is the deadline for mail ballot application. So you want to get that in the mail. And as I've been saying during all of these, everybody in Newport has a reason to go to vote on September 8th during the statewide primary. You will be choosing from 12 Newport City Council candidates. You'll be narrowing it down to 8, and then November you'll be narrowing it down to 4. So vote.sos.ri.gov is where we get started. And Lynn, you are an incumbent. You are on the council. You currently represent Ward 2. And how we've been doing this is just start and let us know a little bit about you. And maybe tell us why you're rerunning and maybe why you're running for at-large this time around.
Okay. Well, I started off running for city council mainly because I got involved in so many projects and organizations years from the time my kids were in the Newport Public Schools. I became co-president of the Cranston Calvert PTO, and it just went on from there. I became more and more interested in the community. Back in 2014, Justin McLaughlin decided to run at large, so that opened up the seat for the second ward. So I took that opportunity and I won that election. And then I've continued to stay on in the second ward because I enjoy being a ward representative. I like the quality of life issues, but as time goes on, you know, you're branching out all the time with people, and suddenly you're answering questions and helping people who are outside of the ward. So I just felt as though it was time now to just throw my hat in the ring for an at-large seat, and so that's where I am.
Excellent. Frank, do you have anything before we get started here?
No, I mean, the big question I had was why the jump from the ward to at-large. Let me ask you this. So what do you think are the differences? What greater influence do you think you have as an at-large council person versus a ward council person?
I don't think that there's any more influence, to be honest with you. I think that we all represent the city. The only difference I see is that the ward candidates allow people to know who represents them on the council, and people will say, well, you're my ward councilor, so I'm going to call Lynn. So I'm much more of a hands-on person, I think, than the at-large people. But in the end, we are all council supporting type. But I do think that, you know, sometimes people say, well, maybe we should have all that, and I'm not necessarily against that. What scares me about that is that we might have 5 people from one area of the city and then having nobody represent other parts of the city. So that would be my concern about that. But that's for a charter change, and we'd have to look at that.
I do have one procedural thing I'm curious about. The election of the mayor. How does that work?
After the general election, basically the 4 people who are at-large candidates will say whether or not they're interested in being mayor. And they basically campaign to the whole, all 7 of us. And that's how it works. It can be a little bit rough in the beginning, but we kind of get over it. I mean, somebody's going to win, somebody's going to not, and you just get over it and you move on, So we just try to be the best we can for the next 2 years and try to represent the city as best we can.
Okay.
Excellent. Before we get started here and before Frank kicks things off, I just want to remind anybody watching that we have invited all candidates on. You can visit and see all their videos on our Facebook page or on our website, Newport City Council Voter Guide. You can also find links to the Alliance for Livable Newport surveys that all the candidates filled out. And we have chosen this way so candidates can take their time answering questions and you get to know the candidates. So, we're excited to do this and we hope we hear from all of the candidates. We have a lot more lined up. I think we have another 6 or 7 to do this week, so we're getting there. Frank, go ahead and take this one.
Yeah, and I think we're ready to spill into next week too. But I was wondering, Lynn, obviously all around us and everything we're dealing with is this COVID-19.
Right.
Are you comfortable with the way the city has handled it from its part? And if so, or otherwise, do you think the city is enforcing restrictions correctly? And if we should be doing something differently, what should we be doing?
Well, this COVID-19 has affected just about every industry, and but our main goal is to keep our residents safe. And I do think that the city has done a very remarkable job of, mask enforcement and working with restaurants for their outside space to keep their restaurants afloat, keep their businesses afloat. So I think that we're not going to get 100% mask compliance downtown, but we are working really hard on it. And I've been one of the volunteers who's been sitting out there for a couple of hours every weekend to give out masks to people, and some people just don't want them, and some people will just insult you. I mean, that's the bottom line, and so it's difficult. But now we have the police out there with a bullhorn, saying the masks are mandatory. I think the compliance has gone up from the time that I started to the last time I volunteered. I would say that it's gone up dramatically. So, and science tells us that wearing masks does reduce the rate of infection, and it's important. And I also believe that Joe Nicholson, our city manager, has been working with businesses to make sure that they are in compliance, and the state has come down to inspect various businesses and to make sure that they're compliant as well. So, I mean, all in all, I think we're doing everything we can. And we're also have, like, even today at 4:30 on Zoom, we will have another COVID update from the city manager. So we do that once a week as well, so that we know what the numbers are, where we stand. And so we're on top of it for sure.
Lynn, sticking with COVID here for a minute, obviously it has had an impact on any type of business that runs in the city.
Right.
What are some of the things, and obviously it's had an impact on the city itself and its budget. What would you do, or what can be done, city's economic recovery during and after the pandemic? Certainly this looks like it is going to certainly go on through into next year. Some of the ideas you have for, helping out some of the businesses as well as the city.
Right. Well, I think that for the summertime, it's been rather, not going to say easy, but it's been easier to help with restaurants and using outside public spaces for seating. As the winter comes and people are more inside, I think, of course, that's going to be more difficult. The city is in is in the business of providing services, and we don't have money to give out to businesses to help them. But whatever services we can provide to them, we would certainly look at. So it's a very difficult question. I'm hoping the state and the federal government will look kindly upon businesses and will also help them. So the city just can do so much.
I guess I'll do. Go ahead, Frank.
I was just wondering whether Lynn had any projections or thoughts or what she's heard about businesses that might not survive.
I really haven't. I think that, the restaurants, I think, have been fairly happy. It's the winter time that's going to be the make or break with this. I mean, if we don't have a vaccine by then, it's the colder weather that really worries me right now. So let's see what happens. Let's hope we can get a vaccine. Let's hope that we can get rid of this and we can move on from it. It's been a great learning experience, that's for sure. And every day we learn something new, and that's what those COVID updates are for.
And Frank, I'm going to do it again today because I think it flows better. And Lynn, just wondering, a lot of what we just talked about with the recovery and hospitality has to do with tourism in the hospitality industry. And, just getting your thoughts on, are we learning a lesson during COVID? Does Newport rely too heavily on the tourism and hospitality industry? You could say pre-COVID, in COVID, what alternative industries should the city be looking to develop?
Well, I see this from years of experience in this area, because I remember when the Navy left in the 70s, and I remember going to Raytheon with my mother and jumping in a car, somebody we didn't even know, and we went down to Washington to march on Washington, because we were afraid that this was going to decimate Newport's business community. And it didn't. I mean, Newport actually has become more robust, more vibrant. And then there was the loss of the America's Cup, and people thought that was going to be the death of Newport, and it wasn't. So with all of the people who are so dedicated to the city, and also who are very entrepreneurial, our natural resources, our deep harbor, all of those things are just a natural fit for tourism. So I don't think that we can look down our noses at tourism. It is sort of the goose that laid the golden egg in Newport. I think that people make a living off of tourism. There are some lower paying jobs, but I know people who make a really, really good money in the restaurant bartending industries. So I think that we would dismiss tourism at our own peril and at our own, it helps us with our tax rate. It helps us with all of it. Having said all of that, though, there's always that balance that needs to be struck. And we do have an opportunity in the North End to bring jobs. I think the Sheffield School has shown the city's commitment in diversifying its economy and looking more toward what's called a blue economy, meaning businesses that are associated with the ocean, oceanographics, fisheries, things like that. And we are in a prime location for that sort of thing. So it would be very, it is imperative for the council to look for that kind of balance.
Talking about water, we can't talk about water and not talk about climate. Wondering what, clearly we all know that climate change is going to have an impact on Newport. I wanted you to comment on that, whether or not you thought that the city was doing enough or what it should do to be able to prepare for the future when it comes to climate change.
Well, yes. And for us, the climate change really has to do with rising sea levels. And this is something that I'd been thinking about for quite some time, and I think it's how we respond as a community to those challenges. And I think as a community, we have been looking at ways of protecting ourselves from sea level rise. I mean, you look at the Historic District Commission created a set of guidelines for raising structures. It's really interesting. I went to a talk about this when the Historic District Commission brought about these new guidelines. And because you figure when you raise a house, then the setbacks are going to be different because of the stairs are going to be in different place. And so it's like, it was a very interesting conversation. But if you look at a lot of the houses on the point, they are raised up pretty high. And that was because back after the 1938 hurricane, people raised their homes. And so this is something that the guidelines to bring out would actually, and some of the FEMA incentives could possibly allow people to do that. So that's one thing. The city has also put in tidal gates on Bridge Street, created a new seawall along Washington Street. We're going to be putting tidal gates at Wellington also. And these tidal gates are meant to, the water will come out of them, and then the water can't go back into them. So it's basically keeping the water out. That's the goal. Also, there are other things that we've done, like for instance, the RIPTA project. There's a lot of flooding in that area. So RIPTA created rain gardens in order to keep the water on their property. And that is a big one, is like creating more green space and more permeable areas, such as the pavers on Broadway. Brad from the Fifth Element was telling me one day that when the water would come down Aralt Street, the water would go straight up and hit the businesses on Broadway, hit the doorways when there was a big rain event. And now with the pavers that are there on Broadway, the water goes down into a filtration system, gets cleaned, and then goes out into the harbor. So those are improvements that we've done. We also look to residents to make sure that their storm drains are cleared after a storm. The Public Services does do that, but if you see that it's blocked, please, clean it. And it's being a community. It's trying to take care of one another. And the other thing is like looking at the elevation of your home and how it impacts your neighbor. So those are all things that, the city has done over the years. I mean, I'm sure that, we'll have more professional input by people as time goes on, as we learn more. But I would say that, those are the things. And also the North End plan is going to address drainage as well. So
Lynn, one of the byproducts or one of the products of climate change are more frequent and more severe storms. And among the concerns is the Quinnipiac Island, Newport being isolated as a result of that. Is the city prepared, or has it prepared in the event that a storm cuts it off from the rest of Rhode Island?
Well, we've been looking into that with various communication technologies, and the name is escaping me right now, and it might come to me. But there would be areas around Broadway, such as City Hall, the fire station, the police station, that would continue to have electricity. The hospital continue to have the resources that they need in case we do get cut off. So I'm sorry that I can't remember the name of it right now, but it'll come to me.
Lynn, there was also some things that came around, regarding climate change and protecting our environment from City Council, such as the plastic bag ban and things like that. Do you see other things coming down, the pike for, city council doing more of that type of stuff as well, trying to change behavior?
Yeah, well, Broadway was finished, and I was really concerned about those pavers because, I could see that, people would just throw their cigarette butts down, or, trash is always an issue, and that's something that we always have to concentrate on. As far as other things, there's people always bring up ideas that possibly like banning balloons or banning plastic straws. Those are the things that we can always look at. But I think that the bag ban was actually very successful. We didn't get one complaint about the bag ban, and I was really surprised. I really, the community came together on that in such a beautiful way, and we had a donation by someone very generous who allowed us to give out free reusable bags, and I think that the city did a really nice job on that, and I'm very proud of that effort.
And you brought it up a couple minutes ago, so we can go north now. But I've just been wondering, if you can write all the rules, you could draft the plan. And, it's a cartoon game of what the North End looks like in 10 years. What are your dreams and aspirations, or what do you want to be when you grow up in the North End?
Walkability is a big one for me. Walkability, access to the easy access to the downtown, which right now we don't have. I think that's an economic and a philosophical issue that we cannot go easily from one part of the city to the other. It was interesting, when I went to one of the NBBJ workshops, they asked that question of a lot of people and what it was that they wanted to see. What in the city that do they like now that they would like to see in the North End? And I was thinking like, Bowen's Wharf, Bannister's Wharf, Bellevue Avenue, that kind of thing. And what came up was really surprising to me, and the answer in big bold letters was Broadway. And they like the funkiness of it. There's a certain vibrancy about it, that it's not pretentious. That was something that I was surprised at, and actually I think that would be a good fit for the North End. You need walkability. You need the small shops. I don't think you need the big box chains. That's gone out by the way of the dinosaur with the internet, and you need housing, you need jobs. So in a way, it's the same thing as like Innovate Newport is on Broadway, and it's an easy access to get from there to downtown. So that's how I see the North End plan.
Lynn, maybe we can take another turn. And one of the big issues out there today, obviously, is the Black Lives Matter. It's a long-standing issue of racism. Give us your perspective on racism in Newport and what the city should be doing in order to assure that it is equitable in the treatment of everyone.
Well, do I think that there is that there has been systemic racism? Yes, I do. I've heard many stories, particularly about the neighborhood that I live in the off-Broadway area. I was told by several people who have lived here for many, many years, like Pauline Moyer, that there were African-American people who wanted to buy homes, and the bank would not give them the loans, even though they were working and they had the income. But there was a lot of discrimination there. I think that one of the ways that people build up wealth is through your real estate. And so if you don't have that opportunity to build that wealth through equity, then you are at a great disadvantage. And I think that's what has happened over the years, and we are seeing a result of that now. As far as, I have to say that I think the Pell School was a great step in the right direction in bringing our neighborhood schools together. I worked really hard on that back in 2010, 2011 to get that bond passed, because I thought it was important for all of the kids to go to school together. I think that it brings a community together when your schools are together. And Pell, even though it's too small, it is a great project. And, you know, I know that we're going to get to that also, but I think that was a way, certainly, of not having, you know, people's little silos with their kids in certain schools. And those schools were unhealthy. So now they're in a beautiful school that is healthy with healthy air. And, you know, so we just have to, you know, not worry about a pandemic, but, you know, we'll get there. So, but I think that I mentioned that the psychological divide also between the North End and the downtown area with that highway, I think it leaves much to be desired in the way of bringing the community together. And that's something that the bridge realignment, I'm hoping, will take care of.
To go along with that, and let me throw this in, is affordable housing. A big issue in Rhode Island, and one that certainly addresses and goes to a lot of the racism within the state. Is there adequate affordable housing in Newport? And if not, how do you achieve it?
Well, Newport has, right now, I think the number is about 15% affordable, low income / affordable housing, which is much higher than our surrounding communities. I think Middletown was in the 5 or 6%, and
Newport is one of about 4 or 5 communities in Rhode Island that have hit the threshold of 10% minimum.
Right. And Portsmouth, I think, is about 3%, something like that. That was a lot. Those are the last numbers I looked at. I think that other communities also have to look at themselves and say, you know, what are we doing to help people be able to live and thrive in their communities? You know, we have church community housing. They've done a great job in creating affordable housing in a way that Newport Church Community Housing owns the land that the house is on, and then the person will buy the house, and so they can build up equity in the house, but there's a 99-year lease on the land, so that makes it, the next person who comes in is the property is still affordable. So those are really great programs. But one of the things that, you know, I see right now is workforce housing, and that's what's happening over at the old Cranston Calvert School. And the reason why it would be considered affordable is not because it gets a subsidy, but because the apartments would be smaller. And I think that that's also the plan for the North End, is enable for people to be able to afford to live in these places. They have to be at a certain size in order to make them affordable without having a subsidy.
And this question is kind of twofold. I added this second part in, but, you know, Lynn, a lot of that has to go with making Newport more attractive, an affordable place to live for families. But obviously, we can all agree, and hopefully everybody can agree, that Newport is an attractive place to live.
Yeah.
But how do we make it more attractive for, you know, to bring more families in into the city?
Yeah. Well, that's a really hard question. And I mean, obviously, we have all the resources for it to be attractive to people who can afford it. It's also, but it's very difficult for people who can't afford it. You know, I think sometimes people look at Newport and look at the Newport public schools. I mean, even though we have 2 relatively new schools, we have Rogers that needs a lot of help when it comes to the building itself. And, we need to get the test scores up, and we need to improve the perception of the education in Newport. I don't think the education in Newport is bad. As a matter of fact, I think it's very good. My kids went through the Newport Public Schools. They thrived there. They wanted to go there. They had their friends there. They still have their friends from there. So it's the teachers were very dedicated to their growth. I don't have complaints. And when I did have a complaint about a teacher or a Newport Public School issue, it was addressed. And it wasn't because I was on the council. I wasn't on the council at the time. I was a parent going in asking for help. So I think we need to change the perception of the Newport Public Schools. I know a lot of it is driven by the by the test scores, but we do have kids who are in homes that are more transient, and so do I believe that the schools are good? Yes, I do.
And I got to, and I've done this before, and I'm going to take the opportunity to do it now, is sometimes when we talk about Newport Public Schools or the condition of Rogers, I can only imagine what it makes the students that are going to that school or heading for that school feel like. And I think all of us in the community, all of us in media have to do a little bit better of a job of remembering that people, live there, people go there, and we need to give them something to have pride in. And sometimes stop reminding them, that it was ranked last. But there's a lot of good successes that came out of there. And I'm going to do a little plug here. Frank, you're a big jazz music fan.
Yeah.
And Lynn's son, Chase, who is a Rogers product, is a Newport Jazz Festival alumni. And he has some of his own individual music, and he's a musician in town. So we have good things, and we have great music and great students coming out of that school.
We certainly do. And, if you go to a Rogers graduation, you will come out of there feeling so uplifted and proud of the kids and what they've accomplished. I mean, for some kids, it was not that difficult. And for other kids, it took a lot for them to get there. And, and they get there, and you walk out of there and you say, this is a vibrant school that has a great community. And I always walk out of there feeling uplifted. And I feel very sad that I couldn't be there, for the graduation this year. And it's something that I really missed.
Lynn, where are you on the school bond?
I am supporting the school bond. I originally supported the idea of a unification of a high school between Middletown and Newport. I thought that having 1,200 kids in a school would be better than having just 600. I thought that I still think that the services would be better, all of that. But after going to the Middletown Town Council meetings and hearing what they had to say about Newport and some of the insulting, disparaging things that they said, they didn't even know we have two relatively new schools. They just said that our schools are falling down. I mean, it was like there was like a lack of knowledge about the community that they live right next door to. And I realized at that point, because of RIDE's commitment to a new school in Rogers, in Newport, because Rogers is in bad shape, that we have to take advantage of the money that would be coming to us. We would get 52% reimbursed. So, you can say, well, we only want the money grab. No, we need the money in order to provide a 20% education for these kids. And so technology is very important to education, and having up-to-date classrooms and all of that. I mean, it has worked. It has really worked at Pell, and I think that it could work at Rogers too. It would work at Rogers.
And Lynn, what's the plan what do you think is the best step forward if in November the bond questions fail? So now we do not put an addition at Pell School. We do not have a plan for Rogers. what do you think is city to address school building needs, moving forward? And, would you support regionalization if Portsmouth and Middletown suddenly wanted to host a fiesta and have a conversation?
Well, yeah, I certainly would. I mean, I would hope that Middletown would, come and realize that they're going to be in the same position with their high school in just a very few number of years. So and it's shocking how much it costs to replace anything. I mean, we just put a partial roof on Rogers, and I think that was $5 million, and that was just a couple of years ago. We're always, it is such a big sprawling school that it's very difficult to create a safe environment because there's something like 70 doors in there. There's, it was not really built for New England climate. It was just the wrong school to put on that lot of land. So, but, going forward, I would, if it doesn't pass, I think that we'd have to go back to the drawing board and possibly hope that there's a council out there in a neighboring community that will, see the light. Now, the Pell addition is really important, and we'd have to find a way to finance that one way or another. I mean, that's just something that has to happen. I do want to mention, though, that I did get some of the projections for the tax increase if the bond is passed, and I just want to read this to you. It says, according to the city's latest projections, and I got these from Laura Citron in the finance office, the school bond would have no impact on the tax rate in 2022, and the yearly projections on a $400,000 home are, for example, in the year 2023, $52, the year 2024, $68, and the year 2025, $36. So you can see that over the course of several years, a $400,000 home over 3 years, you're going to be paying about $140 more. So it's something that's affordable, and it's thanks to that $250 million bond that was passed a couple of years ago, and also the money that we would get up front from the state. So it's I think it's affordable, and I think it's important.
What are you hearing in the community? You hearing people talk about it? You're getting a feel for what the community is feeling? Is there a campaign going to be able to sell this? There is a
campaign, and I think you're going to hear more about that campaign. But in this COVID time, we're so isolated that, and honestly, I haven't heard much from people who support or do not support it. So, I get emails about various things, but I haven't really heard anything about not supporting or supporting the school.
In Middletown, they have 18, 3 people running for town council.
I think it's 104.
104 people. There's 18, just to be factual, running. And many people point to the decision by Middletown Town Council not to have a school discussion as a reason so many people are running. Why do you think 12 people are running for at-large? Do you think some of it has to do with schools, or is it just a different political climate? Do you have any feeling or thoughts on why 12 people?
No, I really don't. Normally we would be out and about talking to each other to find out why they're running, and but we're isolated, and we're not at fundraisers, and we're not. It's just a very difficult situation. So I don't really know what the impetus was for people to run. I do want to say this, though. I think a couple of people might be running because of their perception that this council has an anti-business slant. That's the only thing I can think of.
Okay, maybe we'll have a cocktail hour for all the candidates at night via Zoom, and they can interact and talk to each other.
Yeah,
that's a great idea. I'll be the bartender.
That's the worst that could happen. We won't record it. Lynn, you've gone through council a couple times, so I'm not sure if you. Well, let me ask you: do you create? The next question is, what are your top 3 priorities if elected, reelected? Do you create a priorities list going into the next round?
Yes. I have a priority list, but to be honest, what's on that priority list sometimes can take so long that like I'll give you an example. Memorial Boulevard. Now, when I first got on the council, for me that was a big priority because of the traffic, the speeding, right, and just basically the unsafe nature of the crosswalks and everything. So when I first got on the council, lo and behold, there was a consultant with BRIDOT who wanted to look at this, and because there were quite a few accidents at the time. So I thought, geez, this is great. I'm a part of this process. And 6 years later, okay, this spring, we will probably have those safety updates put in. So I could have that on my priority list, but there's a timeline for all of these things. And that's one of the most frustrating things about all of this is that you say, well, what's taking so long? But sometimes it's just out of our control, So Memorial Boulevard will always be on my priority list. I had flashing signs put up near Chapel Street to help the pedestrians with their safety. I've talked to the chief of police about speeding. They've had stings. They've had stings of people who don't, drivers who don't stop at crosswalks. They've given out multiple tickets. I mean, we've worked really hard on that area of town. I do think, though, that the safety upgrades that will happen after 6 years will have a great impact on Memorial Boulevard. There will be flashing speed feedback signs and also motion sensors for some of the crosswalks, particularly the one at Chapel Street, where people who live at Donovan Manor and Chapel Terrace are afraid to cross the street to go to, CVS or Stop and Shop. And also down by Cliff Avenue, there's a very dangerous one down there too. So those, I can have that on my priority list all day long. But when I looked at what my priorities are for this, I know that your last 2 people have written them down, so I had one written down too. But one of the things I'm proud of, I have to say, is that I tend to be as responsive as I possibly can to the residents and the businesses. And I try to get the answers to them. They might not always like it, but I try very hard to do that. And I'm telling you, the things that you deal with on a daily basis are really incredible when it comes to quality of life issues. I've dealt with traffic accidents to roosters in people's yards. I mean, you don't realize the range of problems that you deal with on the city council. So my first priority is to continue to be that same responsive person to everyone in the city, and working on those quality of life issues such as traffic and speeding and noise and short-term rentals and environmental issues. The next thing, of course, the council is going to have to look at the North End urban plan. The North End is an important gateway to the city, and it has a lot of potential when it comes to jobs and housing and greater connectivity. And then the other thing that I have been wanting to do, and I've spoken to Joe about this, and I've actually spoken to a couple of our state reps, is hiring at least a part-time government affairs coordinator who would work up at the State House in order for people at the State House to understand what kind of situations we are here in Newport. I think that people think that we're just a wealthy community and we really don't need any help. But in the meantime, we have a very high free and reduced lunch rate. We have Our poverty rate is at like 14%. So, there's a perception there that I think that needs to change. And I think we need somebody working in the State House, working with legislators to understand those issues and to bring some money back home to Newport, because we are a big economic driver for the city, and for the state, and some of that money does not come back to us.
Lynn, shouldn't that be the role of the legislative delegation?
Well, yes and no. Legislators deal with all kinds of issues. Whether it's Newport or not, they're dealing with state issues as well. So I think a person being up there working with our delegation, but also working to educate other people within the state who would support things for Newport, I think is very important. And I think our state reps do a good job, but I see this as a much more focused endeavor.
Lynn, and I'll bring it up because we've talked about it a little bit, but it's regarding charter review. And the only reason I'm really bringing this up is, if you'd like to see a charter review of the city, what you want to see that address. But I bring up the question mainly because you talked about, and how long it takes to get some things done. With answering that question, do you think Newport City Council should serve 4-year terms instead of 2, or, so that way they have more time to actually get work done instead of campaigning, in my own opinion?
I
wondering what your thoughts are.
I was on the Charter Review Commission in 2007, and we talked about that issue. And, some people who had already been in office who were on the Charter Commission advocated for the 4 years, and actually I should have listened to them. But there's sort of this notion that you get better representation if you have them if you have an election every 2 years. It's expensive, it's time consuming, campaigning takes you away from the things that you'd like to do on the council at times. And so, yes, I think for a 4-year term would actually give the council more stability. Perhaps we could have a new mayor every 2 years or something like that, but because that's just the chair of the council and they're just one vote, and they don't really have any more power than any of the 7 or 6 of us other. So but yes, I wish that I had listened to some of those people back then. I would support another charter review. Let me just say, though, that sometimes I don't think we give the charter review enough time to work, the charter review committee. We hardly had any time at all. It was like bang, bang, bang. We have to make this decision, that decision. And there's a lot that goes into the charter. And when I was on it, we did make a major change where the police chief and the fire chief could be hired from outside the departments. So that was a big deal. And we worked really hard, but that was only one issue. And that was really the only issue we could get through at that time. So you really need a year for people to be on this commission in order to do it right.
Lynn, is there a state requirement for how often charter reviews have to be done?
Yeah, putting me on the spot. I think it's either 5 or 10 years.
I thought it was 10, but I'm not sure. I'll have to research that. But
yeah, it's either 5. I want to say 5, but it could be 10.
Yeah.
But people who do this kind of work and people who are on these boards and commissions are very, very dedicated people. And, it's very hard to get people who want to put in 3 or 4 hours at night for a zoning board meeting. I was on the zoning board. I know what it's like sitting through a 4-hour meeting. People on the planning board have meeting after meeting. It's not just the meeting that you see, once a month. So these are very dedicated people who want to work for the city, and I have to give them a lot of credit. They're very dedicated and they do a good job. And it's hard to find So if you want to apply, go online, get an application, send it in, please. We're always looking for people who are interested, who are, engaged and have ideas. So, that's what we need.
There are a lot of commissions and groups, and if you want to get involved in your local government, there are many opportunities to get involved in many meetings. And of course, you could always show up at meetings and participate, but there are also, right on the City of Newport's website, they list them all. So,
yeah.
But Frank,
historic district, zoning, and planning are the three major ones that, we are always looking for people to apply, and for, so just, keep that in mind.
So Lynn, one last question, I think, or close to the last.
That's it.
If you were wearing a reporter's cap and you were interviewing the candidates, what would you ask them?
Have you ever been to a city council meeting? It sounds like a crazy question, but I really would like to know, how much people really understand about the city governance and the powers that the council has. And we have to adhere to laws. We have to adhere, sometimes the decision is out of our hands because the law is the way it is. So I don't think people really understand that, particularly when it comes to property rights. And they think that we have a lot of say in what happens on a piece of property. So I would say, how do you see the city council's role, and what is their, what are the limitations of their power? I mean, people think we have all this power. We don't.
Speaking of power, this topic has come up in the last 2 meetings, and I don't know how it came about, but do you believe, if there was a charter review done, that Newport should consider going the way that East Providence recently has, and possibly having the residents elect a mayor?
Yeah, that comes up a lot.
Which would mean, for those watching, that it would become a powerful mayor.
Yeah, well, a powerful mayor is more swayed by, certainly by public opinion, right? And a city manager is, is a professional who works on policy and city issues and things like that. So you have two different ways of looking at it. I go back and forth on it, to be honest with you. Sometimes on some issues, I think it would be nice to have a strong mayor. And then other times I'm very grateful for people who have the expertise in city governance. So a mayor who is elected does not necessarily have that expertise in city governance. And our mayor is really a title that is given to the chair of the council, and the important aspects of being mayor, I believe, is a lot of communication within the council, and certainly with the residents, and being the sort of the figurehead at various events. And but it's important for communication all the way around.
And Lynn, this is going to be a tough one. This is a Frank Prosence question, so I hope you're ready. This is the one that was giving you some anxiety, I'm sure, but just,
Why do I love Newport? What's there to love, What's there not to love? I mean, I can walk out my door, not have a car, get a cup of coffee, go have dinner, go to see the bit players at now they're at the Blues Cafe.
Newport Blues, yeah.
And they're loving that. It's a walkable place. It's beautiful. I go down to the point with my dog, and I just say to myself, my gosh, how lucky am I to live here? And I, so yeah, when I was, I would say I was about 13, 14 years old. I grew up in Tiverton, but my father was from Newport. And, but I used to come here with my girlfriend, whose father had a boat on Goat Island, and he used to let us stay overnight on the boat. And sometimes that was not a good thing, but at any rate. But, you know, we would walk off the boat, go to the marina, get some breakfast, and then walk downtown. And I'd say to myself, this is like the most perfect place to live. And this is where I want to be. And this is where I ended up. So I consider myself to be very, very lucky. And I'm very lucky to represent the residents of the Second Ward. I feel very honored by that. And
again, you know, Lynn currently represents Ward 2. She is running at large. So when you go, if you are currently in Ward 2, when you go to vote on September 8th, there will not be a primary in Ward 2. Those will be two different candidates, but there will be a primary for City Council at Large, and that is where you will find Lynn. Lynn, did we miss anything that was on your list today, or anything else you wanted to share?
Not that I can think of. I think we covered just about everything. I mean, you know, no, I don't think so. If you have any questions, or if anybody has any questions or concerns or anything, please contact me at ceglie@gmail.com, or my website, cegliesecondward.com, and you can contact me there, and I can get back to you. So
I can't believe we went an hour and didn't bring up the dog park once.
Oh, the dog park. Yeah, well, you know what? We're going to have a really nice dog park in the end. So it's going to take a couple of years, but, you know. I know. I
feel like every time I see you, somehow the dog park comes up. People always bring up the dog park. It is.
Yep.
It is important for people, I will say.
It's, you know, it's as important to humans as it is to the dogs, because I have made great friends at the dog park. And, you know, there was a group that was going from at 11:30 and 4 o'clock, and you knew that they would be there. You'd sit down, you'd shoot the breeze with them. They had questions about the city, and the dogs would play. And it was just, it was as good for me as it's good for the dogs. So I enjoy that.
Yeah. Frank, did you miss anything there, man?
I don't think so. I think we hit just about everything. And I know people watching have all of this memorized.
Excellent. Well, I will remind people, if they want to rewatch it, they can. It's available immediately after we finish to watch. And certainly, we've said it with each interview we do. Please go on September 8th and in November to vote as an informed voter. There are so many tools out there. It doesn't have to be us. It could be any other way to find out about candidates. But go as an informed voter, and don't just pick a name that rhymes with yours or whatever else it may be.
Right. And this is a particularly difficult time for people to reach out to residents. So, use these forums as a way to get to know us. I think that's very important.
You may not see candidates come to your door this year, and you cannot blame them for it, as they're protecting themselves, their families, as well as yours. So I guess I could advocate, do not vote based on whether you see somebody come to your door or not, because for one reason or another, they might not be because of COVID.
Exactly.
So, Lynn, thank you so much, and we will catch you at 4:30 during the City Council COVID status update. All right.
Lynn, thank you.
All righty.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Prosnitz, another one down.
Another one.
And we want to thank Lynn for joining us.
Yeah.
If you could start chat with other candidates. We have Christmas music going on?
No, that's my grandfather clock.
Oh.
The Westminster Bells.
So it is 1 o'clock. Yes. All right, my friend. Well, I will talk to you soon. All right. So on behalf of Frank Prosnitz, Ryan Belmore, I want to thank you for watching today. Visit whatsupnewp.com. You can see the videos we've done. This is our 3rd video, and we have several more to come. At 3 p.m. today, we'll be catching up with Kim Salerno, who is going for that ward seat that will be vacated by Lynn Ceglie. And she also has an opponent, Charlie Holder, as well. So we'll start diving into Ward 2 this afternoon at 3 p.m. Have a question, feedback, running for office, want to be interviewed? let me know. Ryan at whatsupnewp.com. Thanks again for watching.